Hi, how you going? It's your main Valstride, and today we're going to be testing Palworld's newest blue chicken, Frostplume. Let's take a look. So Frostplume is one of the newest pals added in the Tides of Terraria update, and I was really excited to try this one out because of its partner skill, Peacock Bounce. So what this is going to do is, while fighting together, Frostplume's icy aura sharpens your focus and improves your reload speed. And when you condense the Frostplume all the way up to 4 stars, this is going to boost your reload speed by 50%. Now, the reason I was really interested by this is because in the past, there's been a lot of focus on player damage builds. So we've always had Gobfin in the past, who's been incredibly powerful in your party. But the difference here is Gobfin's ability is a passive skill, which is always going to affect you just for having it in party. Whereas Frostplume's ability is an active skill, meaning you have to have the pal out in combat with you. And that is determined by the text here while fighting together. So that's one of the main differences, but the way I wanted to go about testing this today was to take a bunch of different setups and fight against the Bjorn and Bastigor normal mode boss and use it just as a sort of dummy to do all of my DPS. So I measured a few different setups and took the DPS, and then I compared them so that we could see how much impact the reload speed was having, and I did this with multiple different weapons. And remember, if you do enjoy this content and you find it helpful, like, comment, and subscribe. It all really helps support the channel a lot. So for the first setup, and the one that I'm calling the baseline because it's what I'm measuring everything else against when we look at the DPS in just a moment, I am using the Frostplume here, and I'm making sure that the Frostplume is not attacking the boss. And I want to distinguish that from one of the other setups, which is essentially the same thing, but Frostplume was doing damage, because I wanted to measure the raw impact of the ability, not the ability plus the PAL, though I did take that as a separate metric as a second setup. So for the first baseline setup, it's just Frostplume and the 4 party pals, or 4 Gobfins rather, and I am using Vanguard on the Frostplume as well. Now, full disclosure, I did adjust the world settings for the testing by reducing the damage to player so that Bastigor was not a threat to killing me at all, because I just wanted to sit there and focus on doing consistent DPS and not have this variable of rolling around and trying to dodge attacks and surviving all the time, because that was just going to give too much variance to my DPS testing that wasn't actually a factor of the different builds. So the first setup was just the Frostplumes, like I said, and then I also tested with a 5th Gobfin in party, which is going to give me another 20% boost. So it's 30 in total because he's got Vanguard, but the Frostplume also had Vanguard, so no difference there. They just equate to one another. And then I also tested for the Wixen as my 5th party pal, because what Wixen is going to do is change your elemental damage to fire type, which is going to make you doing super effective damage against the boss. Now you might be thinking, hey, but not all of the bosses are ice or weak to fire, so why Wixen? And it doesn't really matter, because if it's not Wixen, it would just be one of the element converters that are going to give you super effective damage, right? So you would just, in theory, take whichever element converter is going to make your damage super effective. That's what I was trying to test with this setup, or compare it against. And then the other build was just to have a Jormuntide Ignis out in combat doing damage as Jormuntide Ignis does. Because the thing is, you're not just purely getting a boost from Frostplume, right? With every pal you put in your party, you have to consider the opportunity cost, right? We can't just say Frostplume is this amount of good compared to not having Frostplume, because that's not the reality of the situation. It's Frostplume against something else that you could otherwise have. So in this case, I'm thinking, okay, what if I just have a good combat pal out there attacking the boss? Is Frostplume actually better than that? And that's what we're trying to measure today. But I don't want to keep you any longer, so here are the results. What you're looking at are the different setups all along the top, and then each of the different weapons listed in the first-hand column. Now, for each DPS you see listed here, I did 3 different tests. So that's the average across all 3 tests. And I did that because I wanted to remove as much variance as possible and smooth things out a little bit. Now, you will also be noticing that I didn't test every single setup with every single weapon. And the reason for that is because the trend was very quickly becoming apparent to me about which setups were better. So I moved along and just kept testing the baseline against the 5th Gobfin so that we could understand which weapons were being impacted the most by Frostplume's ability. So if we look at the top line as just an example, the Plasma Cannon had a baseline DPS with the Frostplume not attacking of 4,687, which was 6.3% higher than the 5th Gobfin in party. So that's pretty cool. Having a Frostplume is going to be better than having a 5th Gobfin. Now, that's not exactly groundbreaking news because no one's really actually running 5 Gobfins. You're always just running 4 Gobfins and some other party power, but I'll still probably bait you all with a thumbnail that, you know, shows Gobfin as being useless and Frostplume's the new meta. Who knows? But nonetheless, you can actually see if we continue down to the other setups that Frostplume attacking was obviously another 22% higher, so Frostplume itself was doing some damage there. That one's a no-brainer. Then we come to the Wixen, and you can see that unfortunately Frostplume isn't going to be the new meta because the Wixen outperformed everything else. So if you just convert your damage to a super effective elemental type, that's definitely the best way to go for your 5th party pal. However, the Yormantide Ignis was actually only 18% better than the baseline, but it was actually worse than the Frostplume attacking. So it was 18% higher than the 4,687, but you can see there the DPS 5,518 was lower than the 5,735 we got with Frostplume attacking. So Frostplume attacking and its ability is better than having a really strong combat power just out there doing damage, which is pretty cool. I didn't think the blue chicken would actually be that good, but it turns out that it is. Now, it does vary weapon to weapon. For example, you can see as we move down the list, the laser Gatling gun actually benefits more from having the 5th Gobfin in party than it does with the Frostplume, and there's 2 main reasons for this. The first is just that the laser Gatling gun does low damage per shot, but it fires a lot more shots in total. And the second more important reason is that the ratio of reload time to shooting time is lower on the laser Gatling gun than it is for these other weapons. So those are the 2 main things you want to think about when you're considering using Frostplume is 1, do I have high damage per shot? And 2, is my reload time a large portion of my overall engagement time? And if it is, then Frostplume might be worth thinking about. And you can see that really play out on weapons like the multi-guided missile launcher and the rocket launcher, which both benefited the most from Frostplume's ability. So the multi-guided missile launcher is really the one I want to focus on because even though it was still better to have the Wixen than even the Frostplume attacking, the difference wasn't as big as it was when using the plasma cannon, for example. So you can see Wixen was an 88% increase from the baseline with the plasma cannon, but it was only a 42% increase from the baseline while using the multi-guided missile launcher. And then lastly, you can see that unfortunately the advanced bow does not benefit from the Frostplume buff at all. I was hoping it would make you draw your arrows faster, but that doesn't seem to be the case. The only other main thought I wanted to add to this video was, while using the multi-guided missile launcher, I was thinking about its applications in the arena. Now, I haven't really played around with the arena a lot yet, but I'm hoping that the CC you get from using the rockets and being able to spam more of them because of the fast reload might actually outweigh a slight loss in DPS by the fact that you have to have a Frostplume in party compared to some other meta pal. But overall, I'm pretty happy with Frostplume. It's not going to be the new meta. I'm not going to be taking this instead of my Wixens for hard mode Bjorn and Bastigor, for example. But the fact that it does do more damage than a Yormantide Ignis is worth mentioning. So that's really cool. I'm looking forward to seeing what we can do with this power moving forward, especially as they add new weapons into the game. But that's all for today. Let me know in the comments down below how you've been liking Frostplume if you've been trying it out. Otherwise, thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time. Have a good one.